Hey, everybody. Welcome to FL Teams. It's Jeff Macolino and Jeremiah Hensley. It's the FL Teams Weekly Power Ranking Show. Thank you for joining us. And also joining us, back with us, this episode is sponsored by our friends at Symbol. Our partner, our newest partner, or our old partner that's new again, is revolutionizing the world of sports betting and fan engagement by making sports fandom profitable. That company is Symbol, the stock market for sports. Download the Symbol app and use code FLTEAMS to receive a free team stock valued up to $150 upon signing up. Again, use the promo code FL Teams. You can download that app, Symbol app, SIMBULL. It's about to come by on the bottom, right there. and the promo code's coming up too. It's FL Teams. You know, pretty easy to do, and you get a free stock, which is cool.
I think that's a great reintroduction for Symbol and us going on and getting a free team stock up to $150. Who knows, man? That's a great little way to get started.
You could be lucky and get a Florida team like the Lightning, or you could be unlucky and get a Florida team like the Jaguars. Let's roll on into these power rankings. As always, we're going to start with the bottom half. A lot of shaking up, especially at the top part of this bottom half. We'll and a couple Florida teams down here too. Start off with number 32. The Houston Texans remain 32nd in the power rankings. Number 31, the Detroit Lions. Boy, they just don't know how to win games. They're number 31. The Pittsburgh Steelers are number 30. The Carolina Panthers were this close to being in first place, but they're number 29 in our power rankings this week. The Jacksonville Jaguars, another loss. They fall to number 28 in the rankings. The Chicago Bears, number 27. The Denver Broncos won a game in London, but they're still only number 26. The Indianapolis Colts are number 25. The Las Vegas Raiders, number 24. Cleveland Browns with a big Monday night win. They move up to 23. The Arizona Cardinals, 22. The Green Bay Packers continue to lose. They're number 21. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers continue to lose. They're number 20. The New Orleans Saints, their defense showed up for the first time this year. They're number 19. The Washington Commanders are up at number 18. And rounding out the bottom half, number 17, the defending champion, Los Angeles Rams. Let's start with Jacksonville. They're a young team. They play a lot of close games. I said it about Detroit. I think you could say the same thing about Jacksonville. They're competitive. They're good, but they're just not. They're not able to win games at this point. It's unfortunate. Another loss for the Jags.
Well, I tell you what grabbed me though is, I questioned, I think here last week and everything else, them trading James Robinson because of Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne looked like he was a stud last week. He did look like he could be an every down back. It was a 1 week snapshot, but he stepped up and he made plays. What I do appreciate again about the Jaguars is I think it's a weird thing, right? They came out pretty competitive at the beginning of the season, so you get a chance to get those expectations high, and it looked like their division's going to be kind of bad. But I think they've settled into the fact that they're not going to compete this year, and that's okay because they're making moves as such, right? Throwing out speculative picks to bring in Calvin Ridley for next year. If he's reinstated, it is what it is. Now you've got a guy to go with Christian Kirk. I think they are a team that's obviously got a game plan on where they're going, right? So at least, again, when you look at these bottom teams, it's comforting to see some of those that have an idea of where they're going. I feel like Jacksonville's one of those. Unlike Carolina, who just seems to be in a tailspin and still winning games or being competitive, even though they're fire selling and have no quarterback. And, it's a mess there.
Yeah, well, and look, for the Jaguars, one thing they can hold on to is in the beginning of the year, it looked like they had a chance to win the division. The way the Titans are playing, there's no chance for them to win that division. Obviously, they're 2-6 now, which which makes it even less likely. But getting another top 5 pick to add to the young core they have in the long term, that's better than, to me, that's better than if they win 7-8 games and miss the playoffs. Win 4 games, pick number 4 in the draft, get a superstar player to help keep building a talented core of players. And I think it at least when we look at the Jaguars, you could say they've got a bright future.
Right.
Now there's another team in Florida. That I don't think anyone, including myself, who was kind of down on the Bucs this preseason, didn't expect them in the bottom half of the power rankings at any point this year. I'll tell you that.
No.
They started out with their first 2 drives, got 10 points. They had a 10-0 lead. It looked like, all right, maybe they figured things out, and then everything from there was a disaster. They just they really can't seem to do anything well at this point. Not over the course of a full game. You'll see a glimpse of good defense. You'll see a glimpse of a deep, you'll see a 1 deep ball pass to Mike Evans that works. The run game is just abysmal. I think they're still 32nd in the league in running the football, which it's a problem. That all being said, as far as this season outlook is concerned, they're 1 game out of first place behind an Atlanta Falcons team that, let's face it, they're not world beaters.
Right.
The Falcons were 2 missed kicks from Carolina's kicker Pinheiro away from being a 4-way 3-5 division. How crazy that would have been. So the Bucs are still very much in it if they can figure it out. I'll say, obviously, we're looking at these rankings. The Falcons have not been named yet, so we know they're number 1 in our power rankings in the South. The Saints leapfrog the Bucs too, because the Saints have shown they can do a lot of things well, but they weren't playing defense. And the Raiders' offense isn't bad, by the way. Shutting out the Raiders' offense, their offense wasn't their problem this year. It was closing out games and everything like that. So the Bucs, look, I think the Falcons are tougher than we thought they were. The Saints, I think maybe we'll see. They play Monday night against Baltimore. We'll talk about that game again later when we talk about risers and fallers. But the Bucs not in a great position for this year, but they're in a really worse position for the future, kind of the opposite of Jacksonville. Because after this year, they're going to need to figure out what they're going to do at quarterback. They've got they've got some young talent, but Mike Evans isn't quite he's not young. Godwin's still looking a little rusty coming off the ACL. He's young enough. Leonard Fournette, he's got a lot of miles on those tires, and he's had a rough season after week 1. I don't know how promising it is for the Bucs.
They went from being built to compete now to like the wheels are falling off of it. So literally it's a quagmire. There's no exit strategy. There's no exit strategy for the Bucs. I mean, it's just legitimately, it's just got to be blown up, right? At the end of the year, it's just got to be blown up and like salvage whatever pieces you can and sell them off for as many picks as you possibly can, right? And keep drudging forward. As we were looking through this though, man, halfway through the year, and if you look at the bottom half of our power rankings, there's no way in week 1 we would have seen this, right? The Rams, the Saints, the Bucs, the Packers, the Cardinals, the Raiders, the Broncos, the Colts. I'm like, that's 8 teams that we easily had competing for playoff spots.
I think, actually, I wonder if I have my preseason ballot right here. I would guess that maybe 7 of those teams were in my preseason top 10. The Rams, the Bucs, the Raiders, the Packers, the Colts, the Saints, and the Broncos were number 11 on my preseason ballot. So, yeah, that's 7 teams that are in the bottom half of our current power rankings. We're in my top 11 in preseason, which Shows you how well I'm doing picking
insane.
games this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely insane. And then, it's watching the strategy down near the bottom, right? Because you talk about the Bucs they're just kind of stuck. Green Bay's got some young receivers they've tried to bring in, but I don't. They're obviously not sold on Jordan Love. If they were sold on Jordan Love, this Aaron Rodgers thing would have played out completely different. So that didn't happen. The Jaguars have a plan. The Bears going out and making a move for Chase Claypool. They're putting some
an interesting move.
Yeah, I mean, it's a younger receiver that can maybe add something. The Colts are, I admire the fact that they're looking for their quarterback under a rookie now. They're like, screw it. We've tried all the veterans. Just let it go. The Lions, interesting moves. I guess they're stockpiling picks again, but, TJ Hawkinson, I kind of figured like he's a guy that you'd want to build around. So it is that interesting point. The trade deadline brings us to that point of who thinks they're contending and who's kind of waving the flag. Right.
It is interesting that I know the Packers were one of the teams that were just constantly being thrown out. They got a trade for a receiver. They can still salvage this season, which I think is correct. And now, I mean, frankly, it's if they don't sign OBJ, if he's healthy in a couple weeks, they're not getting outside help.
No,
they got what they got. And that was an interesting non-move to me because look, they're 3-5. 3-5 in the NFC is still very much in the playoff picture, by the way. Not just in the NFC South, in the NFC, you're one game out of the last playoff spot if you're 3-5. Almost every single team, aside from the Panthers and Lions, and even those two teams, if they went on a crazy winning streak, they would be right back in the mix.
It is a weird year that way. That you're at the midway point, and outside of a couple of teams pulling away, I mean, there's a lot of jockeying underneath, man. I mean, this is still very much a team just getting hot away from. I keep going back to, again, not harping too much on it, but the Bengals. The Bengals, the way that they came together at the end of last year. And in this bottom half, I'm telling you, from what I see in the division and the way that it is, I do think the Saints are going to get healthy. And if the defense is playing, the offense is going to get healthy. And Andy Dalton has brought something a little bit different. And I think, the Saints are a team that can absolutely still make some noise. I think in the NFC, really, it is kind of wide open. I mean, we'll get to the other guys that we see at the top of this, but I don't see anything that's a given. I just don't.
No, and there's one thing I'll say about the NFL this year. Obviously, you've got your winners and your losers, but there's been so many. We'll talk about the Dolphins in a minute, obviously. But their game against the Lions, I know you and Isaac were very worried about that game. The Lions fought tooth and nail in that game and easily could have won. And that's the margin of difference in this league right now. And that's some teams, again, obviously I'm going to lean back on the Saints. Alvin Kamara gave a post-game speech in the locker room after the loss to the Cardinals. And he went on a rant about the team not having their swagger, and they needed to find it. Well, they found it.
Yes,
that's the shift. The difference between winning and losing in this game is so much just we can win this game or we're going to win this game. The Lions, at this point, they just assume they're going to lose every game. And that's, I mean, I think that helps play things out the way they play out.
Yeah, I was listening. It was on Tuesday, so the trade deadline yesterday, and I was listening to a show with Von Miller, and it was his podcast with somebody else on there, and they were talking about the trade deadline and players moving, and they were kind of like happy for these guys who went from bad teams to good teams, right? They were like in that losing way, and because they talked about just what you talked about, there's certain franchises that you have that hype with you with the Lions, and you're like, we're going to come out, we're going to compete. And then you lose 2 or you lose 3. And then that whole feeling is just, here we go again. Right. And it's just, you can't get it off you. Right. And I think there's certain teams right now, like the Broncos, cannot seem to get that off of them. I don't care, winning in London, whatever. The Broncos they just smell bad, dude. And the Raiders,
they got that stink on them.
they just do. And the Raiders the same way. Like two teams that really thought. And the Raiders, I'll go back to like, dude, maybe Josh McDaniel just really isn't an NFL coach. I mean, his time in Denver didn't go very well. And he came into a team that was in the playoffs with a lot of talent and added Devontae Adams, and it ain't going well. I mean, some guys are just maybe be a coordinator. I don't know.
Yeah, the Patriots could use him.
And then last thing on the bottom half, the Rams, now Cooper Kupp, I don't know how long he's going to miss, but I didn't watch a lot of Rams games before the playoffs last year, but I've watched more this year. Maybe it was always this way, but this year their offense looks so Cooper Kupp centric. Like I don't see another team that feeds a guy the ball more than the Rams feed the ball to Cooper Kupp. And that just doesn't seem like a winning strategy to me in the NFL. You just can't do that.
No. And I know they said he's day to day. So there's an interesting matchup with the Bucs and the Rams on Sunday. I mean, that's a game that, if the Rams win and they get to 4-4, they probably feel pretty good. Same with the Bucs. If they win, they go to 4-5. They're probably back tied with the Falcons for first place in the South. And vice versa. Losing that game, that might be a dagger for the season for these teams, especially depending on how other games in the division and the conference play out, because the Rams are starting to slip behind the Seahawks now, and the Bucs don't want to fall. I don't think they want to fall a game behind a team like the Saints at this point either. If the Saints pull out a win,
we're at the midway point, and we're talking about the Rams chasing the Seahawks and the Bucs chasing the Falcons.
Yeah, just what everyone expected.
Yeah. Speaking of, let's get to those guys up in that top half, right?
Top 16. Number 16, the aforementioned Atlanta Falcons. Number 15, the New England Patriots. That was a frustrating game if you were rooting for the Jets. Number 14, the Los Angeles Chargers. Number 13, the Monday night debacle, the Cincinnati Bengals. Number 12, the New York Jets. They did their Jets thing. Number 11, the San Francisco 49ers. Number 10, the Baltimore Ravens. Number 9, the New York Giants. Number 8, the Seattle Seahawks. Number 7, the Miami Dolphins. Number 6, the red-hot Tennessee Titans. Number 5, the Dallas Cowboys. Number 4, the Minnesota Vikings. Number 3, the Kansas City Chiefs, unanimously on all ballots. Number 2, the Philadelphia Eagles. And number 1, the Buffalo Bills. The only ballot that had the Eagles in first place was yours, Jeremiah, this week.
Till they get a loss, they will remain.
I'm giving the Bills the bogey, the mulligan for losing to the Dolphins. Giving them a mulligan for that game. If they lose another, the Eagles, I will put them in the top spot. The Eagles, though, tomorrow they play the Texans. They're not going to make any case to pass the Bills by beating the Texans.
Yeah, well, I don't. Looking at their schedule coming up, I don't know who's going to get them, really. I mean, that's scary enough.
Well, it's such a weak schedule. I mean, It really is. I mean, they do play the Cowboys again. They play the Giants twice, although I don't think the Giants are as good as their record. I mean, I think most people probably agree with that. Obviously, our power rankings agree with that. But let's start. Let's hop over to Miami. They move up to 7. It's interesting to watch their movement up the last couple weeks. They've played really underwhelming games against really bad teams. Mm-hmm. They've moved from 13 to 10, now to 7, but it's more of just a war of attrition. They didn't lose like the Bengals They didn't lose like all these other teams, the Jets, the Giants. So yeah, they're going to move up just by a win's a win in the NFL. Obviously, I assume you walk out of there thinking, man, we've got some problems we got to fix.
That was literally the title of my post-game video that I posted. A win's a win. It literally was. But here's what I really think it is, man, is it becomes more and more apparent that this offense was tailored to Tua and his strengths. And when Tua is healthy, the Dolphins, as long as Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are healthy, it's a cheat code, man. It's a cheat code. You're never out of a game. I mean, legitimately, these two guys are going to go well over, combined 2,500 yards for the season. I mean, easy, like three, like it's insane.
Probably over 3, yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about before this. Like Tyreek Hill has more receiving yards than like 6 teams, right? And so the offense, and this is a position that I've never been in as a Dolphin fan, man. And this is since like 88. So do the math. I've never been in a position where I felt like we can score, right? We can score at any time. The defense has to get better. The defense is really, really beat up. I mean, that's the thing that doesn't get talked about at this point. Brandon Jones is now going for the season. He was playing great beside Hollywood Vaughn at the safety. Byron Jones doesn't look like maybe he's going to play this year. He was supposed to come off the pup week 6, and we got nothing. Then Nick Needham, who stepped in from there, went down for the year. So you're literally playing an undrafted, corner in Kader Kohu, and, still rolling Noah Igbenogany out there, which is, I thought the Dolphins would make a move for a corner, especially when I saw what William Jackson III went for. I mean, it was like a 5th-round pick. He's a great man-to-man corner. That would have made me feel good. But Miami went the other route and went and got a pass rusher, because that's the other thing. Our defense isn't rushing the passer. But bringing in Bradley Chubb should change those things if he stays healthy. And I kept having to reason it in my head where they said, like, a good secondary makes a defensive line better. A good defensive line makes a secondary better.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So if you can get pressure with 4 coming with Bradley Chubb, I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is the Dolphins just on offense have the chance to be who they were against Baltimore and who they were in the second half against Detroit. Okay. I'm not going to wave my flag and talk about how we shut Detroit down in the second half. It's Detroit. We should have shut them down in the first half. I mean, that Jared Goff looked like
Goff
Joe
is
Montana.
going off.
Right. He looked at Joe Montana in the first half. We couldn't do anything with it. So it's going to be another interesting game this week for the Dolphins. You're not going to give them a whole lot of credit if they beat Chicago, because they should beat Chicago. But mobile quarterbacks like Justin Fields have given us fits in the past, just like Lamar did for 3 quarters. And, in the NFL, I think really what that is the Dolphins just, it's not fair on the offensive side, really. And, bringing in Jeff Wilson Jr., I think is going to be underrated, because Chase Edmonds hadn't done anything for us. I mean, coming in as a 3rd down back, he wasn't catching the ball. He wasn't running.
I think the Dolphins may run into an issue at some point because they don't run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those, when you're one-dimensional, at some point someone's going to figure out a way to stop it. And if you've got Mostert, you've got Wilson, great, just run the ball. Let them stop the pass. Just pound it down their throats. At some point, look, we've seen Patrick Mahomes with Tyreek Hill in the Chiefs offense. People figured out a way to stop that.
Yep.
They run the ball, they can still score. They're going to figure out a way to slow down Hill and Waddle at some point. Somebody. Yeah. Even if it's not until the playoffs. So yeah. I would like to see McDaniel try to run the ball a little bit more. I think that's being 2-dimensional is important.
What drives me nuts is we have success when we do. Mm-hmm. Mostert's averaging almost 4.5, 5 yards a carry. It's not like he's not having success running.
Yeah, he's having a good year. Just doesn't have a lot of touches.
Right. We just stop. It doesn't make sense to me at all. So I'm hoping maybe bringing Jeff Wilson back in this mix Now you got maybe McDaniel's feeling a little more at home with two of his backs from San Francisco. I don't care, whatever makes you feel warm and fuzzy. Run the ball. We got to run the ball because end of the day, dude, it happened again. I'll use the Bengals as the example of it. When it gets to cold weather playoff football, you better be able to run the ball. And they did with Joe Mixon, the same way the Rams turned it up in the play. You got to be able to run the ball, and you got to be able to do that. And you got to get after the passer. That's why I do love the Bradley Chubb, is if we're going to compete with Buffalo or Kansas City, you got to make Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes uncomfortable.
So talking about Bradley Chubb, let's jump into the trade deadline in general. I think, to me, it seems like the Dolphins may have been the winner of the trade deadline. I think when I was doing my personal power rankings, I moved them up a couple spots because I'm like, I'm going to give them. I like adding Chubb. I think that makes a big difference. The Wilson over Edmonds, I think, is a positive move. I don't not enough to impact my power rankings, but still, I think a positive mood. Is there any team you think even came close to making the impact that the Dolphins did?
Baltimore. Baltimore bringing in, and I don't know why his name is escaping me right now, but he's the guy that's been wanting out of Chicago, Roquan Smith. I think Baltimore's another team that their offense, if and when they get healthy again and can run the ball, I think they can make noise with this. They've got to stop people on defense. So I think Roquan Smith adds a lot to that. Of course, you talk about the 49ers with McCaffrey. That happened before the deadline, but that's a big move.
Yeah, he showed out quite a bit on Sunday.
Well, and then, hey, the Vikings. Adding TJ Hawkinson to Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen.
It's another weapon.
That's a lot of weapons on that offensive side of the ball. And Minnesota's quietly sticking right in there and playing very well. And then I think I showed you and me and Isaac were talking. I really, really, really like the Bills getting Hines. I think Hines is under the radar in what does he do well in Indianapolis? Out of the backfield, catching passes, and he makes an impact. You add that to the Buffalo team, it's just another dimension that they don't have right now. And, God forbid.
He's been such a good third down back for that team. They take Jonathan Taylor off the field on third downs and put in. That speaks volumes to. I used to get angry when they had Marlon Mack, USF kid, and I'm like, keep Marlon Mack on the field on third down. No, Hines has always been the guy. So I think that's one of those under the radar moves that's going to pay off. Little plays here and there. Not going to be flashy. Not going to add him to your fantasy team, but he'll make a couple plays a game. That's the Bills are. God, they talk about loaded.
In Buffalo's offense, they don't run with traditional two back anyway, right? So you could see Hines on the field for 3 downs, right? They could just come out the gun 4 wide with Hines in the backfield, and you basically got 5 receivers. But you look at the guys at the top that didn't make moves, right? The Chiefs, right? But I think the Chiefs are just finding themselves kind of like Juju is starting to step up.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling's having a big year.
Yep.
Another USF kid.
The Cowboys, I think the Cowboys, some of their best moves are just getting guys off the bench. Tony Pollard looked fantastic.
Yeah.
In his chance to just take over.
He should be the bell cow back for the Cowboys, even when Zeke comes back. He's just better. Yeah. Elliott's been abused by a workload early in his career that's, taking its toll. Pollard's just simply a better back. There's no two ways around it. He's more explosive. He makes more plays. Cowboys are, if they weren't the Cowboys, I'd say they're just kind of like the Vikings, just kind of quietly, all the noise. The Bills, I think they clearly look head and shoulders better than everyone else. The Eagles are undefeated. So they're getting all the noise. I feel like even the Chiefs, Vikings, Cowboys, kind of under the radar. The Titans have won 5 in a row.
Yeah.
The Dolphins are getting some hype because Tyreek and Waddle are making highlight plays.
Yeah.
The Seahawks are getting some hype because they came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Nobody expected them to be competing.
Hey, that's another one, man. Remember I mentioned Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker.
Making plays.
He was a beast at Michigan State, and he's a player now. And then you've still got those talent on the outside, and Geno Smith is playing next level. And the Ravens are going to hang around there. I do. Look, I'll give you this much with the NFC. The Eagles, the Vikings, the Cowboys, all those guys. I think in the NFC, those teams just aren't going to be as battle tested, right? I just don't. The AFC, you're still facing firepower every Sunday, right? In your divisions and everything else. I mean, you look at, you got a team like the Patriots who get embarrassed by the Bears and then come back around and knock off the Jets who've been running roughshod over people. I just think the AFC top to bottom is stronger. So some of those the NFC teams are just going to feast on cupcakes until they really get into a game.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I mean, the bottom line in football, and this is the one thing I always say, it's a tough pill to swallow, especially this year. The Bills fans rightfully can think they're the best team in the league. The Eagles fans, they're all delusional, crazy people, anyways, but they think their team's the best team in the league. It only takes one bad game to be bumped from the postseason. Any round of the postseason, it takes one shaky game or one brilliant game. You think the Bills are going to be excited to face Patrick Mahomes again in the playoffs? Mm-mm. They know what he can do. Because Allen make one or two mistakes, that could be it. The Eagles, Jalen Hurts, he's not battle tested at all. Not in the NFL. No. You really want to go into a game against the hell, I pick a team. The Cowboys defense. If the Saints rally, I mean, Jalen Hurts looks like God against the Saints. I don't even know if he'd be a starting quarterback right now, if not for his games against the Saints the last 2 years. Talk about skewing the statistics. But again, not a defense that if they're healthy coming in, not a defense that you want to face in the playoffs, because you make one little mistake, they can beat you. That's how close, even as good as the Bills and Eagles and Chiefs are. It's look,
the Titans,
a game of this much.
If the Titans can just get Tannehill to not make mistakes, right? I mean,
I think they need him back. Malik Willis, not quite ready.
Yeah, that wasn't quite ready.
We learned that for sure, because I was curious, and the Titans, their defense is good. They had a weak opponent, also. Frankly, let's not forget. Yeah. Houston is a team that can cover up a lot of your flaws.
The last thing on that, it was we were talking about. I go with my Dolphins they flashed on the trade deadline, so. Our trade with San Francisco that allowed San Francisco to move up to get Trey Lance. The Dolphins have parlayed that into Jalen Waddle. Then we traded one of those picks in the deal to get Tyreek Hill. And then we traded the other pick in the deal to get Bradley Chubb. So they got Trey Lance and we got Waddle, Hill, and Chubb. Yeah, I'll take that one all day. It's kind of, look, Chris Greer has done some great things in Miami working the draft. But we're in a weird spot again because now our cupboard's kind of bare. We've gutted the draft picks and it's about win now.
Yeah. It's kind of like what the Rams did.
Yeah.
And look, the Rams window is closing fast, but they got a Super Bowl. So who cares? Right. Like that. I ask a Rams fan, would you rather be good for the next 3 years and not have won a Super Bowl? No, you take the damn Super Bowl. Yeah, the Dolphins, I think, have a larger window, by the way, than the Rams because they're still a pretty young team. They are in win now mode, and now they don't have a first round pick to trade for Sean Payton.
I know. Now we're stuck with that goofy McDaniel kid.
Yeah, that's we'll see how that works out. Let's look ahead to week 9. Obviously, we're all predicting Houston to beat Philadelphia tomorrow. No.
Oh, absolutely. Why not?
In baseball.
Well, yeah, no, it's happening right now. 5-0.
Oh, is Houston winning 5-0?
Yeah, Astros got the lead.
All right. Oh man, I wish Major League Baseball would just say we're disbanding. The league's over. No World Series this year. Done.
Yeah.
Everyone knows how much I love Philly, and the Astros are just cheaters. So
yeah.
All right, week 9.
I'm not going to steal your thunder, Jeff. I'm going to let you go first on the risers and fallers, big guy.
All right, I've got 3 games written down here, and it's like I don't know which one do you say is a riser and which one's a faller, but I because I think all 3 of them you could argue both cases, which is best. So we might have some of the same games here. First one on my list, Minnesota against Washington. The Commanders have quietly gone on a nice little run here. They've won 3 in a row, I think. They're 4-4. The Vikings are a very beatable team, even though they've only been beaten once. They easily could have dropped the game to the Cardinals. They easily, I would say, should have lost the game in London to the Saints.
Miami
they're not
right in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, well, and it's the Lions also had the lead. You know, they blew that lead against the Vikings. Vikings are a beatable team, and the Commanders. I mentioned swagger earlier. I feel like they're starting to get some with Heineke at quarterback. Yeah. Look, they're. I'm not saying they don't look great. Having to rally to beat the Colts in the last minute of the game. You know, they're not going to put up 50 points, but. You know, they just have enough toughness to maybe pull one out. They're 18 in our power rankings. They get a winning record. They're going to skyrocket. And on the flip side, I don't know how far I'd drop the Vikings with a loss because they'd still be one of the very few teams with a record that good.
Yeah.
But it would show that, okay, yes, just what we're saying. They could have easily lost 4 of their games that they've played, that they've won. Yeah, maybe this is just proof that they're not that great. Would also really spice up the NFC a little bit. Get washed. I mean, the NFC East would all have winning records.
Mm-hmm. The Commanders are quietly. I mean, they're not I mean, if you look at their position players, right? You know, Brian Robinson Jr. coming back has given them a little bit more of a power back. At the same time, Gibson is played well. He's a great third down and out of the back. McLaurin is talented. Their defense, Chase Young, you know, those guys, there's young talent all around that team. And a guy like Heineke has shown before that he can get a little fire built up under him. It's amazing what happens when you bench Carson Wentz. I think every team should fight for him in free agency just so they can bench him in week 2 and then take off.
You're going to start week 1 and you get 2 plays and then we're going.
No, and it would be kind of telling with the Vikings, and it would say a little more about the Commanders, 100%.
Yeah. What do you have? Again, I feel like I could have stolen your riser or faller in that one.
Well, look, Monday night, if the Saints at home beat the Ravens, they're going to climb, right?
Yeah, and they were our biggest climber this week, actually.
Mm-hmm. Even at 4-5. Because, you know, you've heard me preach it and we've all been through it. I mean, the NFL is a next man up league and all that good stuff. And I'm still the way, right? But the Saints, they've been pretty decimated early on. I mean, you've had a lot of injuries in key places. And the talent is there. And as it gets healthier and comes back together, and now being led by it. And you know, I wasn't a Jameis Winston fan from the beginning. So I'm all about Andy Dalton. I think Andy Dalton's a better fit for the team just in what they're trying to do. The Saints beat the Ravens. I think it says a lot. And then if the Ravens fall, you've got to start to wonder there too. I mean, that division's wide open, which is still just odd. Well, I mean, I don't know wide open. I guess Cincinnati and Baltimore are going to fight for it. Cleveland's still lurking, right? Pittsburgh's awful. But I don't know how I feel about the Ravens, man. The Ravens offense to me is Mark Andrews and Lamar's running the ball. I don't see much outside of that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if Andrews is going to be healthy Monday. If history is a guide, teams typically get very healthy right before they play the Saints. But
yeah. So
but the Ravens are another team that seem to have that injury virus thing going around, just like the Saints. They can't stay healthy
they can't
either.
keep running backs healthy for the last 2 years. They just keep cycling them through, man.
Yeah, and that game was one of the 3 games I had on my list too, because yeah, you're right. The Saints will be 4-5, but again, the Falcons play the Chargers. I think most of us assume the Chargers should win that game. That means the Saints would be tied for first place. Is there anybody in the NFL, in the NFC, that wants to play the Saints in the playoffs? Do they want to travel? I don't care if the Saints are 7-10 or 8-9 sneaking into the play. You want to go to the Superdome to play in the first round of the playoffs? Probably you could be looking, and I don't have sympathy because the defending champion 11-5 Saints went to the 7-9 Seattle Seahawks and lost in 2010. So I don't have sympathy. You could be looking at a 12-win Dallas or New York Giants having to travel to the Superdome in the first round of the playoffs. They're not going to be happy about that matchup.
With a back like Kamara, and when that receiving core comes together healthy, Olave, Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, and then these other guys, and then a weapon like Taysom Hill, which can really be deployed in so many different ways. And then their defense is tough. And the better that they start molding together and coming together, that's a tough team to play, man. And it's a tough place to play. 100%.
Yeah. Tyrann Mathieu been the biggest fail in free agency for him. Got a pick and actually should have had a pick 6 at the end of that game, dropped it. Should have had another one, but little things like that. He starts getting confident. We've seen what he can do. I mean, he's a game changer. So yeah, that's a team you don't want to see them get confident because they can be a headache. My other one, I'll say this one, I feel terrible for bringing this one into it. Talking about a team that could fall and a team that could rise, but more a team that could fall. The Seahawks-Cardinals game. I can easily see the Cardinals winning this game. I feel terrible. I constantly bring the Seahawks up, I feel like, in this segment, and all they do is win. But, I mean, they lose this game. They're number 8 in our rankings right now. They might be number 20 next week just because our preconceived notion about the Seahawks. And look, they'll only be a game ahead of the Cardinals. If the Cardinals win, they'll get the 4-5. Seahawks will fall to 5-4. I mean, at that point, I'd say, yeah, I'll take the Cardinals for the rest of the season over Seahawks. Make up one game, that's all. And look, if on the flip side, I'll say this: if Seattle wins the game, every time they win, I'm saying, okay, they proved me wrong again. They're better than I think. At a certain point, I shouldn't be surprised, but I don't know when that point's going to actually be. Maybe it'll be when they get to the NFC Championship game.
I told you they were a fraud, right?
Well, yeah, at a certain point, you'll have to be like, I know last year some people were saying with the Bengals, they were 10-7. They went on a late run. They're not going to be a problem every week. And, they were a problem.
Boy, to get my head right, and I think you saw with my power rankings, I'm really trying to stay the same of, the broken record of I'm trying to treat a team that they are what the record says they are. And that's hard. And I understand with power rankings, you should have some sort of forward look into it. But I feel like Arizona is one of those teams that every week we're like, but Arizona. But they just can't, it's a dumpster fire. There is all the talent in the world, right? I mean, offensively, they should be a video game. Defensively, they should be putting pressure. It's just something doesn't come together for them. The team that I think I'm going to leave Sunday knowing the most about, period, though, win, lose, draw, is the Tennessee Titans. I'll know about the Titans come Sunday.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that game, I don't think that's a riser or faller game, because look, if the Chiefs lose, I might keep them at number 3. I'd probably drop them to 4 and put the Titans at number 3. There's not going to be a lot of movement in my rankings. I had the Titans 5 on my ballot. They were 6 in the FL teams, and the Chiefs were unanimously 3rd on every ballot. So there's not going to be a lot of movement, but I am glad you brought up that game. That's a huge game if the Titans, to me, if they even just play competitively in that game, I'm going to say, all right, Titans are the same as they've been the last few. They're a good team, and they're going to be a headache to beat in the playoffs.
They're going to be a tough out.
They're going to win a Super Bowl, but if you get to the tournament, you got a chance.
Look, you got to love having one of these games at this point in the season too, right?
Yeah.
I think a veteran sort of team like Tennessee with some young pieces, but a coach that knows how to coach up and be where they need to be when they need to be. So for Vrabel, this has got to look great to you, right? You're mid-season, you're playing what should be one of the class teams and you're going on the road, right? I'd rather test myself there, right? And see how this team goes on the road in Kansas City and how do they handle themselves in a game that's on Sunday night. So the crowd in Kansas City is going to be just going nuts. I ain't going to say it's playoff atmosphere, but almost every game at KC at night is playoff atmosphere.
Pretty much, yeah.
So you're gonna be going on the road into KC, and both of you sitting at 5-2. You're gonna find out a lot about who the Titans are Sunday night, and a lot about who Kansas City is. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, when Tennessee's defense smacks them in the mouth, can they power? Can they play power?
I tell you what, the one thing that could change in my power rankings, if that game turns into a blowout, the winner of that game might jump Philly on my ballot. Philly plays Houston. They're not gonna gain ground by beating Houston. I mean, if it's a close game, and again, one of the Chiefs Titans, one of them just looks head and shoulders above the other. I'll say this: my argument for the Bills over the Chiefs or the Eagles. I'm sorry. You line them up on the field. I will take the Bills 100 times out of 100. I know they wouldn't win 100 times, but I would take them every time to beat the Eagles. Being honest, I'd like to see the Chiefs Titans game and how that shakes out. But with the Chiefs, line up against the Eagles, would you pick the Eagles to win that game?
It'd be hard.
I don't think I would on a neutral field. To be fair, neutral field, because the only time they're going to play is the Super Bowl.
Man, I hate that you keep talking like logical about the Eagles. I really hate that. Because they really haven't beaten. I mean, you look, they beat the Jaguars by 8 at home, Cardinals by 3 on the road, Lions by 3. I mean, it's not, they got the Cowboys by 9, but that was at home without Dak,
Yeah. And I think that's their most impressive victory, isn't it? I mean, as far as beating another winning team.
I mean, they beat the Commanders. They beat the Vikings 24-7. That's
right.
2. They're the Vikings.
That's their most impressive win. Yeah. Although I didn't see the second half of that game. I may have been out at a bar and a bit inebriated, but I feel like they got up early in that game, and I don't know if they struggled in the second half or they just kind of sat on the ball in the second half of that game.
Kirk Cousins became Kirk Cousins. He threw 3 picks. Right.
Yeah. Now it's going to
have a way of doing that to Kirk Cousins, right? They're the one they knocked the Vikings off to get to the Super Bowl when they won it that year. But I think also Minnesota is finding their footing. You had a new offensive coach coming in there and they're going through it. But yeah, I mean, I give respect to the last unbeaten that remains standing. And truth of the matter is, as much as we've talked about the NFL, who knows, man? Houston could shock the world tomorrow night. You never know, man.
I wouldn't put a dime on it, but I also would not be shocked. I mean, that's how close the NFL is. And look, I don't think Houston gets blown out in most of their games. They play competitive. I mean, they kept it. They lost pretty big to the Raiders, but going into the second half, I think they had the lead a couple weeks ago. Like, I mean, it would not shock me if at some point in the game the Texans are leading. It would probably be early. It probably won't last long, but they play tough. Although I'm curious. Brandon Cooks is a very
he's salty.
Salty about not. Thank you. I was trying to think of a clean word to say. He's very upset that he was not traded, and he might not play because of that.
Yeah, he's not happy at all.
No one forced him, last I checked, to sign an extension with Houston this offseason.
No.
Sometimes maybe, Brandon Cooks is a guy who got traded away from Drew Brees and the Saints before the Saints went on their run from 17 to 20.
Then he goes away from the Rams.
He was pissed that Michael Thomas was getting the ball. This rookie in 2016 was getting more targets than him. And Sean Payton said, goodbye, go to the Patriots, have fun.
Yeah.
And they lasted 1 year with him before they sent him to the Rams. And now he's winded up on Houston. And look, he's causing problems again. Go figure.
Sometimes you got to kind of, again, let's look at this massive equation. There seems to be one constant, right? Brandon Cooks. So, so I could see, I was a little bit shocked that Green Bay didn't try to make a move for him. I was a little bit, but I mean, Green Bay, their young receivers are playing a little bit better. And, outside of the Vikings, in the NFC, the Packers are still right in the playoff hunt.
One game back. That's it. I mean,
and that's another team that eventually they'll figure out this offense and just keep running it through, running it through the running backs.
I think LaFleur has the same problem that McDaniel has, that Zach Taylor has.
Mm-hmm.
Stop passing the ball and hand it off to your running back sometime.
Yeah.
The Bengals are a frustrating team to watch because they let people just tee off on Joe Burrow when they've got Joe Mixon in the back. Run the damn ball.
Will the NFL do that, right? Like, because I do feel like kind of when I first started watching, I feel like I was kind of in a heyday when I was really watching, like the 80s into the 90s, right? That was the Emmitt Smith. I caught the back end of Walter Payton, Barry Sanders.
Yep.
Roger Craig. There were running backs that were like a lead running back, one guy, and he lined up and they ran the ball. And then I feel like the NFL kept morphing to now it's just this pass happy 5 wide, everybody in motion. Like, will it ever come back? I think Tennessee's as close as we get, right? Tennessee just lines up and says, we're going to run it at you. I don't understand why Indianapolis isn't doing that. You have a good offensive line in Jonathan Taylor, and you instead throw it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, looking at the top rushing attacks, most of them are not really traditional rushing attacks. You got the Bears, right? They throw for. They're probably going to set the record for the fewest passing yards in the modern era. We'll say.
Right.
The Ravens, who again they get a lot of those rushing yards from their quarterback. The Browns, that's the game style they have to play.
Yeah.
The Giants, give the ball to your playmaker.
And Daniel Jones are still running the ball.
They're kind of a one-dimensional team. The Eagles, that's I mean, there's a few winning teams in here. The Jags, and the Saints and the Titans. I think that rounds out. And the Saints, they also have a weird wrinkle with Taysom Hill.
It is funny though that the mobile quarterbacks that are at the top of that, right? I mean, Chicago, Baltimore, the Giants.
The Eagles.
Because people don't talk about Daniel Jones as much, but Daniel Jones gets out of the
running
pocket
quarterback too. Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence. There's still a lot of that. And you're right, Jalen Hurts. So I just don't think that's a sustainable model. I just don't. I mean, Lamar, maybe he'll prove it all wrong, but until he puts a ring on his finger, it ain't going to sell me. I think you still got to be able to make big plays when you need to in the pocket.
Yeah. Well, I think having your franchise player repeatedly take extra hits that he does not need to take. I think that's we saw the Ravens last year didn't make the playoffs because Lamar Jackson was hurt the back end of the season.
Right.
That's I would say Michael Vick had that problem too. Now he also was a bit scattershot as a passer. I think Lamar is a better passer than Michael Vick, but you start getting banged up. If you have a sprained ankle and you can't pass from the pocket and you can't run,
well, especially when your whole offense is predicated around that, right? I mean,
right.
I think guys like Trevor Lawrence gets more natural yards, right? With being flushed and rolls out. I think Jalen Hurts also kind of not so much designed runs. But your Baltimore, your Chicago, Atlanta, I mean, those are designed,
Yeah.
Atlanta's whole offense. There's no reason Atlanta should be able to score points, really. I've got to watch more of their games because I don't even understand how they move the ball.
Especially since Patterson's been out.
Yeah. I have no idea. I saw Kyle Pitts finally showed up for like a game or two, but I don't even know how they're moving the ball. So
no. I mean, against Carolina, I watched the back end of that game. There wasn't a lot of offense, and it turned into just offensive shootout galore down the stretch there. That game was that was the NFC South in a nutshell. Wild and crazy place, folks. Just try to hang on.
That was it. Wide open. So, man, it keeps jumping around. Every week we're going to see them again, Jeff, the shuffle. But you know what? I think our top 5 or 6 have kind of fallen into wrong thing. I think our top 5 or 6 have kind of fallen into lock, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're kind of there.
Looking at the ballot, there's clear breaks where everyone was, this 1 and 2 was the Bills, Eagles, or you had Eagles, Bills.
Yeah.
Then the Chiefs were unanimous across the board. And then I feel like that's where a line is. And it's Cowboys, Vikings, Titans, Dolphins.
Yeah.
Those are usually the 4, the Giants, the Ravens. One ballot had the Niners up in that tier. I'm not ready to buy the Niners yet.
I was just going to bring that up because I think we all have a team that for whatever reason we're just not ready to buy, right? And I feel like every year mine is San Francisco. And I used to think it was because we owned their first round draft picks, so I just wanted them to be bad. But now we just traded away that draft pick, and I still just don't buy the Niners. I don't buy the Niners, but they consistently win and stay competitive.
It helps that they play the Rams twice a year.
Yeah, man, and the Cardinals, right? And but there's something about that team that I just don't buy.
Yeah. No, me too. I'm not sure what it is, but I haven't bought into them at any point during the season. And
when they were making their run. I mean, when they were going to the NFC Championship game, I'm like, they went to the Super Bowl. I'm like, this is a fluke. Like, I never buy I don't know what it is.
No, I'm right there with you. And maybe it's Jimmy G.
It might be
common denominator. I think that it might be what it is, but yeah, I'm not buying them yet. But again, they're 4-4, so they're right in the thick of things. Really in either conference. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
4-4, you're right in the thick of things. You're not out of it.
At the midway point of this season, it's pretty wide open. I mean, we can't even say really minus the bottom 3 because Carolina is still kind of in it. I mean, Carolina again
2 games out of first.
Right? I mean, just about anybody but Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Houston can still make the playoffs.
Yeah,
and some would argue Pittsburgh, maybe. Who knows?
Detroit would not shock anyone if they rallied 3 straight wins or something. Then they're right back in it. I mean, that's how weird this league is this year.
Yeah. It's definitely
hold on tight. We've still got more than half the season to go.
Yes.
So hey, check here every Wednesday for our new power rankings. Hit up Symbol, download the app. You can go to the website. Remember to use that promo code. I don't know where my hand is there. Promo code is FL Teams. Get yourself a free stock. And look, I've been using Symbol for a while now, and every time I go on there, I'm earning some money because you get dividends when the team that stock you own wins. So every time the Lightning play, I get some money, basically.
Look, it's a great idea and an interesting way to tie in sports and fandom, right? Because if you're the guy who stands alone, like, okay, all you Niners fans, Jeff and I don't believe in you. But if you do, buy some stock in the Niners, right? Maybe the public's push the price down a little bit. Jump in on this thing when it's a little low and ride it when it gets high. It's not, you catch a winning streak on Symbol and you start cashing out. You know what I'm saying? Get a hold of one of those Detroit Lions on a 3-game streak.
Buy low, sell high.
That's it. Absolutely.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Remember to follow FL Teams on all the socials. Remember to hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Hit the like button or whatever on Facebook. Follow. It's one of those things. I'll send you Jeremiah's home address if you want to follow him around.
If you want to send me fan mail or
fan mail, just show up at the middle of the night.
Nah, right.
But yeah, FL Teams, top Florida sports source. More fun things coming, by the way, but I can't say. But stay tuned for that. Thanks for joining us, folks.
See you next week.